you. We started in English for the very simple reason that our first speaker will present in English. You should all know Mike Dietrich. If you don't, Google for Oracle and upgrade or migration, and you will be surprised that most of the hits refer directly to Mike. Mike is a long-term employee of Oracle, part of the extended PM team, and has only one topic, the upgrades. Today, his topic is to migrate onto the Oracle Multitenancy platform. And you might ask, why is that so special? And there were various reasons for that, and that is why he needs to compile it. As you know, his compilation is a few hundred pages of all the upgrade paths. He shows you a few of them to 19C. Why 19C? For the simple reason it's the long-term support release for the database. You see that the other ones that are coming later on are one-year releases. So this is the one you should be on, and this is why the migration to it is so important. The multi-tenancy is important for reasons that Mike will include into his talk. With that, I'd like to hand over to you, Mike. For those having questions, please make use of the Q&A. If Mike is finishing a bit early, which we'll squeeze him to do, you can also ask interactively here in the video. So, stage is yours, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. Hello, everybody, and thanks to the guys for inviting me to the user group, to the Switzerland user group. I think I never presented for the Swiss OUG so far. So you see, I do user group stuff sometimes. This is the T-shirt of the Polish user group, the one where they serve more beer than presentations on stage. And I'm quite excited to speak about migration to multi-tenant today. So as Thomas introduced me, thanks Thomas, we know each other for quite a long time. I'm the product manager for database upgrades and migrations in Oracle. And if you need more information about upgrades, everything is on the upgrade blog, including that slide deck and also the big slide deck. So mikedietrich.de.com. And if you intend to follow me on Twitter, my Twitter handle is mikedietrich.de as well, and it's really safe to follow me on Twitter because I use Twitter solely for technical things, nowhere for politics or music recommendations or whatever, so only for Oracle tech-related stuff. Upgrade blog, when you tick on slides, you find the slides. So there's a category webinars or web seminars 2020, and there you find also the slides for today. Yeah, let me start here and with a very, very brief piece about release strategy, because as Thomas introduced that already, I think it's really, really important and an important topic. So when we look at the lifetime support policy, you will see that we are really, really close to the end of extended support for 11.204. This is the red bar here. And we are already in the extended support time for 12.102. Extended support in red here means extra costs, so 20% per year for your support, extra payments on top of the support fee, unless you have a ULA contract with Oracle. If you intend to stay long on 11.204, there's a special offering called market-driven support at the same price tag than extended support, but this includes only security and CEF1 fixes and an extra ACS service. So by the time as we speak here, I hope that everybody, all of you have moved away from 11.204 already. And then the question will be, where should you have gone to, or where are you? Is it 12.201, 18, or 19? And here I like to just repeat what Thomas already mentioned, long-term support release versus innovation release. So we communicated now officially and said, 19C is a long-term support release, and a long-term support release has always 5 years of premier support. That is the black bar here, and that meant also that we just extended the support, the premier support for 19C by 13 months to make it really a full 5 years. Plus, you'll have the option of 3 years extended support on top if you need to. Innovation releases, that is the releases coming after 19C. Those will be only 2 years in premier support and with no chance for extended support. So innovation releases are for new features. If you want to test blockchain tables, if you want to give it to your developers, that's the right release to play with. But ideally, you move your production stack from long-term to long-term support release. And we ensure that there's always a long enough period where both long-term releases cross each other. So you have a realistic chance to move your estate over from one long-term to the another long-term release. And when we go back now to 12.2, 18, and 19, that means 19 is the long-term support release, supported until end of April 2024. Or if you have a ULA with Oracle, then even longer for you. For 12.201, because here we made I would say we haven't communicated this so perfectly well. We made a change in the release numbering in between that release family. So from 12.201 to 18, which is 12.202, and 19, which is 12.203. And as a lot of people misunderstood that, and as we weren't very well communicating, we added now for those customers who are on 12.201, a thing called limited error correction support. And that means no extra cost for you. That's why I made it light red. So you can stay longer on 12.201. You should ideally go the sooner or later to 19C. Don't go to 18C because there's no extended support available. But this limited error correction support includes security fixes, includes severity 1 bug fixes, and includes also the release updates. And if you have like a merge patch on top of a release update, you still can request that afterwards, after December, because that ends in 30th of November, the black bar for 12.201. So you can request also merge patches on top of a future RU. But you should really move forward. If you need to read that afterwards in more details, the MOS node 742060.1 mentioned here in the slide, the MOS node title is not the single source of truth, but that's how I call it because it has all these details. This was all I wanted to say about the release and patching stuff. Let's go to upgrades. And even though my topic for today is multi-tenant migration, I have to say a few words about upgrades at first. When we speak about database upgrades, your successful path to a successful database upgrade is you download and install 19C. It's a gold image. Then you add the most recent release update, always to the target. Typically not to the source. The source doesn't have to be patched, but always download the most recent one. This is right now 19.8.0, and in 3 weeks, mid of October, October 20 something around that, October 17th, it will be 19.9.0. And then you use the newest auto upgrade. I say 2 words about that in a second, and then you do all the performance magic, like with SQL plan management to ensure plan stability and stuff like that. Auto upgrade. This is the only recommended way to upgrade databases. And I don't do marketing here. I just mean that as I write it here in the slides. If you are a fan of DBOA, we own now DBOA as well, and DBOA will stay around, but auto upgrade is the much easier, much better way and way more powerful. And the idea of auto upgrade is, and one of the Switzerland customers is really one of the grandpas of auto upgrade, because they showed me a 5,000 line shell script. This was Mobilia Insurance a long while ago. And we took this back to development and we checked this and said, hey, let's do something for all customers. And other customers gave us their scripts as well. So we try to bring together the best. And this is auto upgrade. And the idea is that you use a small, tiny little tool. You always download the newest version from this MOS node, because you see that version is from end of August, and we are already packing together the newer version. So in a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, the new version will be there. And this will be even newer than the one you will get with 19.9.0. So always take the newest version. At the end of the MOS node, there's a change log, and we document clearly and transparently what we changed, what we've added with the new tool. But in case you need an older version of auto upgrade, that is also available. The last 2 or 3 versions are already at the bottom of the node when you scroll down to the end. Just in case, even though we tested a lot, if you break something, there's still the previous versions available for your convenience. You can upgrade to 19C, but just if your project is still running and you need a quick thing, you can go also with auto upgrade to at least 18.5 or to 12.201, at least with the January 2019 release update installed, which I hope everybody has already, at least. Why am I telling you something about auto upgrade, even though my presentation is called Migration to Multi-Tenant? Because you will learn in a second that we can use auto upgrade also for the migration to multi-tenant. So let's go to migration to multi-tenant. And migration to multi-tenant and auto upgrade are not mutually exclusive. They work together. So we tweaked auto upgrade in a way that it can upgrade your database unattended, just push the button with one config file, and then it migrates into multi-tenant directly. And this is what I would like to show you here. But before we go into that, I would like to give you just a quick review on where we are and where we are going. This sentence here was put in the upgrade guide a long while ago, the deprecation of the non-CDB architecture. And it's still there in the 19C upgrade guide. So it says non-CDB architecture, that is how you know the Oracle architecture, is deprecated. What means deprecated? That means we don't develop something further. But then the hard part is coming, maybe desupported and unavailable in a release after 12.2. Now this is also very imprecise because it should say after 12.2, which includes 18 and 19 as well. So 12.2 means 12.201, 12.18 and 19. So something will happen after 19C. That means, in reverse to you, with 19C, you still have the full choice. But we made it a bit sweeter, a bit more like exciting for you. We offer you a very cool thing with 19C and only with 19C and future releases, but not with 18, not with 12.201 and not with 12.102. You can have free user-created pluggable databases without the multi-tenant license. And this is quite thrilling because that means, hey, you may have not considered it or you decided, oh, why should I have single tenant? And we argued a lot internally with the multi-tenant team for a long while. So it's really hard to promote single tenants, which means only one PDB to customers, because the benefit is not so big. There are a few tiny little things you can do, but with only one PDB, it's hard. But with free PDBs, you can do a lot of great stuff. And so free PDBs, user created, that means the PDB $seed does not count here. Only your 3 user created PDBs are included in the standard Oracle license. And this is also very important. That is included also for standard edition too, not only for enterprise edition. The only recommendation I give you if you do that, there's an init Aura parameter called max_PDBs and set this to 3 to avoid any unwanted license violation, because it's then quickly, you have 3 and you plug in a 4th one. So max_PDBs equals 3, and that's the right value here. Why am I talking about 19C? And what happens after 19C? And this is taken from the Oracle 20C upgrade guide, I think. Yeah, upgrade guide. There it says, hey, Oracle 20C, which is a cloud release right now. Oracle 20C multi-tenant upgrades only. That means, really, we do that? After 19C, there's no non-CDB architecture available anymore. That means you will have to migrate to multi-tenant. And so it's time now with free PDBs. You should do it right now. You should go there. And later on, there's no way out anyways at some point in a few years when you bring your estate into the next long-term support release. You have already experienced them with multi-tenant and you know the benefits and you use that. And so it's time, but this is an outlook into the future. So auto upgrade comes back here. This is my current database estate. 11.204 is the minimum release I can tackle here. I download auto upgrade. It's a tool, tiny. This is not a typo on the slide. It's just 2 megabyte, 2.2 megabyte at the moment, I think. So really tiny little tool. And the only work you do is you generate a sample config file and you adjust that. And this config file has now the specs for your database, the SID, the DB unique name, the host name, the source, the target home, and when you want to start. You can add more, like you can add shell script, should be executed before or after. You can tweak it, you can tell it, hey, I don't want to have a guaranteed restore point, which is the standard, or delete my restore point after upgrade. All that is possible, but with 6 simple parameters, you can script your database upgrade completely. So this is done in less than 5 minutes. Then you push the button and it upgrades. Typically, I would strongly recommend you that you go to 19C, but just in case, as I said before, you have to go to older release for whatever reason, because your app provider provided only 18 certification, or you're still on Oracle Linux 6 and can't go away, auto upgrade works as well. But the cool thing is, when you created now a CDB, a container database on that host, or in a future version of auto upgrade, even on a different host, we're working on that right now as well, then auto upgrade will plug in after upgrade. Right now, auto upgrade upgrades first, because there we have a proven fallback. We have a guaranteed restore point. We can go back if the upgrade fails, or you can interrupt it, abort it, go back. Then we go to multi-tenant. This is the path, the approach I strongly recommend. Even though there are other approaches, and with 20C or 21C, we'll have to go a different route, because as we don't allow non-CDBs anymore, we can't upgrade first. Then we need to plug in and then we will upgrade. But this is right now still allowed, and this is the safer way. Of course, it's not a black box. Nobody likes black box tools where you don't see what's going on. You have a job console. You can control the tool, you can control what it's doing, and it writes a lot of log information. And this is intended. This is not to puzzle you. It's really, we write the upgrade logs, but in addition, we write also what the tool is actually doing in each phase. So from pre-checks to pre-fix ups to upgrade to post-fix ups, everything is really logged. Also the data patch executions, which happen automatically. And so if something goes really wrong, we find out, you find out, we find out, everything is completely transparent. And this was our intention when we built that tool. It should be as easily usable for you. Just really one simple config file, push the button. This config file can contain 100 of databases. There's no limits, absolutely no limits for you. Use script in there, it's very powerful, but it should be fully transparent on the back end if something needs to be diagnosed. So it's not a black box tool. And by the way, it's a standard license, so nobody has to pay anything extra for that. That's standard for everybody, even SE2, whatever. Now, migration to multi-tenant, how does the orchestration look like? It's one command. That means you kick off auto upgrade with that config file. It upgrades first, here in my slide, only to 19.7. Then it plugs in, and what you have to do is you have to create that container database. The red one in the middle of the slide, you have to pre-create that. That is not done by auto upgrade, but auto upgrade plugs in the non-CDB, makes it a PDB, and then triggers the conversion script non-CDB to PDB.SQL and recompiles and does everything necessary until your non-CDB is then a PDB. Start to end. There's a secret I want to share with you, because this is not in the documentation, but if you're a reader of my blog, you may have seen this already. If you upgraded already to 19C, you can still use auto upgrade to plugin. Actually, we developed that for ourselves, because when we test the plugin, we don't want to upgrade a database always at first. We had a 19C database. We wanted to just test all the various plugin varieties. And so my mates in the US and in Mexico, they added this functionality. So auto upgrade, you can use that. It's fully supported. Auto upgrade can just plug in an already upgraded database. So what you do here, this is a simple config file from auto upgrade. It defines the logging directory. This is where all the logs of auto upgrade then go into. And auto upgrade is also a zip minus zip option. So if you want to upload the log files to support, absolutely no problem, minus zip. You get one zip file, it tells you where it's written to, and you upload it to support, everything is included. So it tells me my database is DB12, I want to start now, and my source and my target home are identical. And this is when I want to plug in only, because then source and target are the same. It's already a 19C database, and it plugs in into 19C as well. SID is DB12. Log directory, specifically, it's the same here. On the local host I upgrade, target version is 19. No guaranteed restore point in that case, because that doesn't make sense. And the target CDB, that is CDB2 in my case here. This is the CDB, the container database I need to pre-create. Auto upgrade doesn't create that for me. If I want to rename my database, it's currently named DB12, but I have a naming convention. I want all my PDBs, like start with PDB, whatever. Then I rename it and say target PDB name PDB1, and I have a bit more options here. But this is just showing you how powerful the tool is. Even you didn't do an upgrade, you can use it to just plug in. If you would like to see all that in a longer YouTube video, we have a YouTube channel as well. When you go to the upgrade blog and tip on videos, the first link is the YouTube channel. And I put out a video how to upgrade and plug in afterwards. And it has an index below in the description, so you don't have to follow all my explanations at the beginning. You can just jump into the demo part and then go from there if you want to. So in order to do that, the options would be, we have to define the target CDB. This is the CDB we would like to plug in. You need to create that. Then optional, this is not mandatory. You can rename your non-CDB to a new name. If you just avoid that parameter, then my database in the previous example would be plugged in and the PDB name would be DB12 then. And by default, we do no copy, meaning we leave the files in place. If you don't want that for various reasons, there are a lot of reasons why you may not want that, then you specify target PDB copy option, and then file name convert, and here the equation sign is missing. There should be between file name convert and the bracket, there should be also an equation sign. So I change the ORCL path to PDB1 path. That's how simple as it is. And especially for this option, if you need to play with that, I have put a lot of examples on the blog, and we have also changed and adjusted the upgrade documentation guide here to give you way more advice about this option, because there could be a lot of things can be done here. Now, when we talk about, this was the tooling now, how to do it, but let's think a bit more about the concept when we would like to migrate to multi-tenant. And when we speak about migration to multi-tenant, it's also a good idea to think about the fallback opportunities. So I see two approaches as a high-level overview, just bird's eye view now. First of all, as I recommended, we upgrade to the matching version. That means you have a 12102 database, you upgrade it to 19.8, then you plug in as a new PDB, we run the sanity script. Auto upgrade can do this for you. Or the other option is, you say, why should I do an upgrade at first? Let me migrate directly. So I just take data pump or transportable table spaces or full transportable export import. And so you avoid the upgrade and you go directly. The benefit of that path or that approach is this can work also when you go from complete different operating system platform. Like your non-CDB is currently on an AIX box and you want to consolidate to multi-tenant on Linux, then this works. In this case, an upgrade wouldn't work here. But one thing to mention, every approach, whatever you do, requires a downtime, which in some cases is unpredictable and also sometimes significant. And when I mean significant, I'll give you just an example. In our environments, the typical plugin approach takes, like in my environments here, roughly 10 minutes. But if you do this with a complex e-business suite system, that can take several hours. And the reason is this conversion script, non-CDB to PDB, because that script really changes now everything in the dictionary of your previous non-CDB, which is now a PDB. And it has to do a lot of things, and it will recompile a lot of objects. And this is why you need to carefully test it up front, to get an idea how long it will take. If you need to avoid that downtime involved here, you can reduce it by putting Oracle Golden Gate on top and syncing source and destination. And for me, a bit hard with the entire migration to multi-tenant is that all our proven fallback approaches, like guaranteed restore point or the downgrade scripts, they don't apply here, because as soon as I plug in, there is no fallback available in a typical way as we are used to fallbacks. You can, of course, export import with data pump. When you come from the same version, that's why I still benefit that you upgrade first. You can also go back with transportable table spaces, but only same version, because TTS works only same or higher version. And you can, of course, use Golden Gate as the syncing solution for your fallback on top. So when we speak about now going into multi-tenant, there are a few pitfalls. And when you read on my blog, you find quite a lot of articles about that. Because I test a lot and I do this with customers, and I would like to help people just avoiding the typical things, because the documentation is really short. Documentation always puts light on it from the perspective like, oh, this is how you do it. And then you sit there and say, yeah, but now I get this error message. How should I deal with it? It's better to know upfront and avoid it. And this is the purpose. I don't want to make this like, oh my God, it's so complicated. How should I do that? Oh, I better stay away. No, this is not my intention. My intention is showing you this is the typical pitfalls. Go there, avoid them, and then everything will run smoothly. So the most important pitfall is really database components. And I have a screenshot on the next slide where I show you what the pitfall here is. So typically it is you have more components in your non-CDB than the receiving CDB has. And when you plug in, there's a mismatch in components. But it could also be the patch levels. Like you upgraded to 19.8, but your CDB had been created with 19.7. Then, as I explained already, that involved downtime for the non-CDB to PDB script. And some things work a bit differently. Or for some things, you have to do some extras. Like unified auditing, before you were auditing only in one database per database. Now you have it in all your PDBs. That's not a problem per se, but let's say I have customers who take out the audit records and put them into a central warehouse to make it with an Apex application really visible if somebody really needs to find out something. And now you have to access all your PDBs. The standby implementation, I show you a real-world example in a few minutes to get you an idea why this is a bit special, especially in ASM, but also performance monitoring. Since 12.2, a PDB has its own AWR, but you have to tell it that this AWR will be filled as well. There are a few things you may have to adjust and you have to play with. And here, this is on the yellow box here on the slide. This is what I put on the upgrade block. So typical plugin issues, workarounds, compatible pitfall, time zone, component, patch level, then some minor pitfalls, fallback challenge. So go to the blog and there you will find a lot of things about how to avoid these pitfalls and how to make it a smooth transition. Your best friend will be PDB plugin violations. And this is the view which sometimes I have to scratch my head. So at first it doesn't follow the Oracle naming conventions, but also, and this is more important, it gets purged since 18C with a purge call, but only if a type of a warning in here on error is resolved. So the view consumes now or accumulates all the plugin issues you saw. And you've populate the view already when you do only a compatible check. So you create an XML file for your multi-tenant database and you do a compatible check in your future CDB. And once you do that, it writes you already things in here. If you have errors, that means you have to solve them, because if it's an error, then your PDB won't open unrestricted. And unrestricted means, yeah, you can update it, but if it's only restricted, only DBA users can access it, common users, that's not good. If there's a warning, You may or may not ignore that. I have a lot of examples on the blog about that. When warnings matter or when they don't matter, that is sometimes not really clear. But in general, if something stays a warning, it stays there forever. So this view accumulates a lot of things over time. I have no relief for that. I filed a bug, I think 5 or 6 years ago, and it's still not completely solved. So some relief was the 18C purge procedure. But let's go into details here. What do we see here? And this is a typical component issue. The arrow tells me my database option, Java, Java VM, RDIM, and XML, there's a mismatch. The PDB, the new PDB I brought in, has it installed in version 19, but the CDB doesn't have it. And this does not work. You can have a component only in the CDB $root, and the PDB doesn't have to have it, but not the other way around. You can't have a component in the PDB and it doesn't exist in the CDB $root. And so we need to solve that. How do we solve this? 2 options in this case. Either we deinstall it from the PDB, which is a bit hard at this point because it's already plugged in, or I install the component into the CDB $root and then the plugin errors go away. How do you migrate now? There are so many techniques available. And one is data pump, or another one would be transportable table spaces or full transportable export import, or you can unload your data, or you can call my teammates, my friends in Waldorf from Michael Weick's team, who can do O2O and triple O, Oracle to Oracle, and unload your data and load them back in, whatever. At first, you always provision a new PDB, and then you migrate your data into it. And having an 11.203 database here, it's just an example I put on the slide. So the most simple approach, just for a start, if you don't want to use auto upgrade, or if you're on a different operating system platform, is you do provision a new PDB, the green one here, and then you do an XDP, you move your dump file, you do an impdp. I don't have to explain you that. I mean, this is, I think every person has done this multiple times, if not into PDBs, then at least just for other reasons. But you can also use the network link. So you provision a new PDB again, then you create a database link pointing from my PDB, the green one, back into my source database. And then I start impdp and I specify with the data pump parameter network link, this database link. And then I pull all the data over. Be aware, you still speak to an 11.204 database in my slide example. That means feature-wise, the limiting side is the 11.204 side. Even though I deal here with a 19, I'm still constrained by whatever was available in 11.204. And in this case, we don't write a dump file. So this could be very convenient and very quick just to move in. And if you want to do a fallback in that case, and also in other cases, the standard fallback would be, if I decide now 3 days, I have updates already, but 3 days after the upgrade, somebody decides we need to go back. And then you call Oracle and we tell you, sorry, there's no key to unlock you. There's no reverse of non-CDB to PDB. So your option is you export now from the PDB, move a dump file, import. But the important thing to take care here is you need to create an export dump file which gets understood by the 11.204 database. So it's highly advised that you set the version parameter to 11.204 when you export. And then you get a dump file which is completely transparently understood by the 11.204 import later on, and all goes well. Then I explained you already the upgrade. So this is the recommended approach. We upgrade first, then we plug in, then we convert with the conversion script. When you go to the blog, you find also two other techniques. The other technique would be to plug in first and then upgrade and then do the conversion script, which I disrecommend right now, because for the upgrade, as I explained before, we have a proven fallback. If something goes wrong, I go back to the guaranteed restore point, or at worst case, I run the downgrade script. But as soon as I plugged in at first stage, I'm plugged in. That's it. There's no unplug command available for plugging back into non-CDB world. So at this point, I don't see the benefit. And you find also on the blog the dbmis PDB describe package, which came in now with the July patch bundle for 11.204. I see zero benefit in that. Absolutely zero. I don't know why it's there. Upgrade first, then plugin. You can also use the non-dollar CDB with a database link and then move it directly into it. And I just had this exercise with a customer in Spain who did this with an 18 terabyte database, and the PDB didn't open unrestricted afterwards because something was not adjusted well enough. So they had to repeat that exercise again. Throw away 18 terabytes, do it again. That's why I always upgrade first and then plug in, as long as we are allowed to. But making a long story short, what I want to show you is what would be my fallback options. So I told you already for step number 1, the upgrade, we have a flashback to GRP or the downgrade. But what if we went already to step 2 or step 3? When you are step 2, you have to go to step 3. But when we are in after step 3, we are now a complete PDB. How can we go back? And you would use what I explained before, the data pump export. And if you then are interested in minimal downtime for this approach, then you would use Oracle Golden Gate on top. You could also say, okay, I don't want to have multi-tenant. I want to go back to 19.7, but non-CDB. Then you could use also transportable table spaces in that case, or full transportable export import would work as well because it's same version. But FTX and TTS work only same or higher version, but never to a lower version back. So it's not a downgrade option in the ultimate understanding of what downgrade or fallback means. The multi-tenant team has another idea for that. They say, if you do this, and this works beginning with 12.102 source, when you create your CDBs, make sure the CDB has compatible 12.102 or 12.201, depending on your source release, but the exact identical compatible parameter as your source release has. So in my example, my source is a 12.102 database, and let's assume it has 12.102 compatible already. I upgrade it with, of course, auto upgrade. Every upgrade technique leaves compatible as it is. We don't change compatible. And if you change compatible, later on someday, only 3 numbers, always to the default of the release, which would be 19.00, please. So compatible here of my 19.7 red database is now 12.102. I leave it. I plug in, or let auto upgrade do the plugin, do the conversion. My PDB is still compatible 12.102, even though it's a 19.7 PDB, because my CDB is created. You have no option to distinct the value of compatible for a PDB only. It always inherits the compatible level of the CDB. So CDB created with 12.102, now plugged in, step 3 is finished. If I want to go back now, days after, I can't go back into 12.102 non-CDB, but I can create a 12.102 CDB, and I can run the downgrade script in my PDB, unplug it, plug it into the yellow one, and then run cut reload. This is the standard downgrade, but this downgrade would now happen in multi-tenant. So you end up not with a non-CDB, but you end up in the release you came from. So I leave it absolutely to you if you consider this a downgrade or fallback alternative or not. But I wanted to explain this to you, that this is also an option for going back. So fallback for upgrades, move to multi-tenant is always a migration. That's why I insist to call it a migration. Our usual fallback strategies don't exist, so we can't do downgrades, we can't use GRPs. The only options is data pump export import, or with some restrictions, as I said, TTS, and Golden Gate on top, or this alternative of plugging back in, but then you have to be really careful with the compatible parameters in all your environments. Now I would like to give you an example from the real world, because I told you before, migrating to multi-tenant with physical standbys could be also a bit different from what you know so far. So in this case, I can't name the customer officially here, but it's also a Swiss customer. And maybe if somebody of them is in the call, they may out themselves later on. They will be a public reference one day, but we haven't agreed on that. So the customer is also based in Bern, actually. So in this case, we have a 12102 database. Let's say it's 10 terabytes. It's a banking environment, for instance. And we have a standby. Let's say 100-kilometer distance. And standby, of course, is also physical standby, same release, everything same. It runs in maximum protection mode because it's a really important system. So what we can't do is, we can't now upgrade and plug in and then just say after we plugged in, oh, let's build up the standby now from scratch. Let's ship 10 terabytes over 100-kilometer distance. The idea would be, we do on the red side, on the production side, the upgrade and a plugin, and everything will be replicated on the standby side as well. So we don't have to ship, and we minimize also the outage time. Because if it's just replicated, once I'm done on the red side, it should be replicated to the yellow side afterwards within maybe a few minutes, but then I'm back in business. And maximum protection means that I run really in the highest secure environment. Every commit I do in production database must be acknowledged as being received from the standby and committed there as well. Before that hasn't happened, I can't go on with my transactions on the production side. So what do we do? First of all, if the broker is involved, broker needs to be disabled. And I personally defer also the log transport to have my standby really untouched at the time I do the upgrade. The application gets disconnected. So I disable the service or whatever I do to completely make sure the application is disconnected. I use auto upgrade. I upgrade here to 19.7 again or 19.8, doesn't really matter. So this is downtime at this point. Once the database is upgraded, I enable the log transport again. Then I start my standby database in the matching environment. In my slide here, this would be also now a 19.7.0 home on the yellow on the standby side. Then I bring it into managed recovery mode. It starts syncing the upgrade logs. So because you don't upgrade a physical standby, you just sync with the logs. And then I enable the broker at the end at this point. That would be the normal approach. In my specific case, I won't enable the broker in that case because I don't need a broker to interact here anymore. And I need a new broker configuration later on. So this is just if we would do this normally. This is how a physical standby database upgrade works. The standby then gets upgraded by redo log apply. Standard thing, no rocket science, known by most of you for ages. So now I'm in 19.7, but now I would like to go forward and make this a PDB. So I have now what you have on top of the slide, 19.7 production, standby and sync, okay. In addition, I created already the black 19.7.0 production CDB. Has no PDB, only the PDB $seed, which is always there. And I create or sync that with a standby. So I have now CDB production, CDB standby. Same as before, just no data in it. You can only use the standby concept with multi-tenant on the CDB level right now. In a future release, we may allow PDB standbys, but not for now. In addition, I set special Indora parameters, and this one here helps me to make sure when I do a plugin operation, it will be replicated to the standby side as well. That sounds good so far. So what do we need to do? I turn my production database into read-only mode. And when it's read-only, I create the XML manifest file. Or auto upgrade creates that for you. But I do it manually here just to show all the steps. So XML manifest file contains now the physical layout of my database and some other markers like the SCN and the data file header and so on. If I'm in ASM, I need something in addition. And this is called the ASM alias list. So at the end, I show you a MOS node, and this MOS node has a script to create this ASM alias list. Because when you're in ASM, you have Oracle managed files, and the Oracle managed file on a production is different in a name than the one on a standby in the ASM. This is very different from normal file system where it's called TTS01 DBF and on the other side as well. In OMF, it's different. So we need this ASM alias list. We need to ship it to the standby and execute a script there. Because if it's not executed, once I want the plugin operation replicated to the standby side, it won't find the files because it will look for the production ASM files, which are not there. So I need this ASM alias list in ASM environment. Now, if it's there, I can plug in. And once I plugged in, I run non-cdb2pdb.sql or auto upgrade runs it. Runtime varies, as I explained before. And at this point, when this is done and recompiled, it's now done. Then I turn on the log transport, and then this operation will be replicated to the standby. And my standby former non-CDB will be plugged in, will become a PDB, and all the changes, plugin, non-CDB to PDB, will be replicated via redo apply to the standby side. And then all is good. And I have the minimum outage here I wanted to have. I was not interested to ship now the black one over the network with 10 terabytes over 100 kilometers. If you want to read more, so mission accomplished, all is good, happy ever after. If you want to read more, when I called my colleague Peter van Puimbroek, our super data guard product manager based in Belgium, Peter over the weekend set this up in his environment, tested it for me, and came back with an excellent blog post explaining all the steps, step by step. Very cool. And he uses also this MAA team, My Oracle support node, which has also the script for the ASM alias file in it. If you're interested, read more about it, please. One thing I wanted to show you, because we are almost at the end, which I think is one of the coolest features in multi-tenant, but the most underestimated one, and this is refreshable pluggable databases. This works with 12.201 onwards. So let's say you'll be on 12.201 already, and you want to test upgrades. How do you do that? And this is so cool. I love that feature. What I do is I create a CDB. And this is 19.7 here in my example again. What do? I create a PDB clone, but I create it as a refreshable clone. Because let's say my PDB is 10 terabytes. And I don't want to wait until 10 terabytes are cloned, and then I test the upgrade on a very old stage. So I would like to have it a refreshable clone, which means it clones, and I decide to refresh it. Once the cloning is done, I say, hey, refresh, or I decide an interval. So I can refresh it as often as I want to. It's still a 12.201 PDB. It is not upgraded yet, but it refreshes perfectly well. And so I can determine the point when I want to test my upgrade. So I get a really close to production database and test my upgrade with maybe it's a 5-minute-old state of my production database from the last refresh, but it's not like 5 days old or 5 hours old. And I think this is really cool. If you work with a guaranteed restore point, you can even go back and repeat that exercise again. So this is refreshable clones. I use that for upgrade testing now quite a bit. You determine the synchronization point. That's why I like that so much. And I think it's the most underestimated multi-tenant feature. And this makes it also very attractive now for you. If you say, oh, I don't want to, why should I do multi-tenant? But these features are not available with non-CDBs. And it's just one of the many cool features with multi-tenant. So again, as a summary, migration is an architectural change. It's nothing you do from today until Monday, just because you have nothing to do on a weekend. It requires downtime. You can also add incremental backups if you want to decrease the downtime if it's just too much, or Golden Gate, as I explained before. And again, the hint on the blog, this is the root article, database migration from non-CDB to PDB, an overview where all the other articles branch out from. And again, about all the pitfalls, the different techniques you can use, you find all that on the upgrade blog. And I would like to close here by quoting Alain Fouras. So Alain is the head of IT database services at Mobiliar Insurance, and we worked together for a long time. And Mobiliar Insurance has consolidated everything. They have over 2,000 PDBs now as of October 2019. And they upgraded recently 735 databases to 19C, and they used auto upgrade. And they write also on their blog about it. So it's nothing I made up, it's really real, they did it. They started a tool, monitor the progress, and there's no reason to sit in front, just let the upgrade run. One config file, scripted, one after another, all good. And really a great job by the Mobi guys. So finally, blog for the slides. And I would like to thank you. And I made it in time. Ha, yes, 1 minute to go. Any questions I could answer right now?
Mike, I wonder how you keep the pace. It's unbelievable. For everyone having questions, hold your breath for the moment and applause virtually, because this was a great session. I think
Thank you,
there
Thomas.
was nothing lost and nothing which you shouldn't have heard. If you have questions, you might want to use the Q&A, or you raise your hand, and our SOUG moderator, Clemens, will allow you to speak up. So take that opportunity. We have roughly 10 minutes time to do that.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Also from my side, we had one question which has been answered by Jörg Sobotka kind of already. The question was, if you do, a plugin of a non-container database into a pluggable database, can you also add services during that step? And Jörg's answer was that you can run an after plugin script kind of, creates or may create a service.
So thanks, Jörg, for answering that already. Yes, auto upgrade gives you the possibility to pass on shell script or shell scripts before upgrade and after upgrade. And the after upgrade scripts will only be executed if the upgrade or the plugin was successful, if you added a plugin. And then in that script, you can simply refer to a SQL script, which does your alter service or create service commands. When you go to the upgrade block and you type in auto upgrade and compatible, I have an example out there how you adjust compatible with auto upgrade with a shell script, which calls a SQL script, and how also to set the environment and everything to make this really work well. You just take this example and replace change compatible with create the services afterwards, and then it should flow well.
Thanks, Mike. I do not see more questions.
Good.
Open. So yeah, I think that's it. Thomas, do you want to add something?
The only thing I can add is, as usual, very comprehensive. Check Mike's blog. And if you have any questions, raise it either with us in the SOUG team or with Mike. Key is, if you are in a situation where you as a customer are in need of specific support for upgrades and migration, I mean, there are several companies whose names are in the background shown by Clemens. So there's lots of local resources. There's lots of ACEs in the country, no less but 25 if I've been counting correctly. At least 20 of them know the subject, which is nothing but great. And last but not least, you might also want to reach out to Mike saying, oh, I have a special situation. How can we grow together? You've seen that on the example of the upgrade tooling. At times, our customers are ahead or have specific needs. Take that as an opportunity. That applies to anything that we also discuss in the community. With that, I think we should have a brief break, and we start 1-2 minutes before the go ahead with the session. The next session starts officially speaking at 1400.